Rick Perry is back.
That's right. He is joining the office of Speaker Dade Phelan as a senior advisor for now. We don't know how long this is going to last, but it is interesting that you do have, and I've never seen this, where the former governor comes back to work for one of the big three, and to add to that, I had heard that there was some grumbling out of Governor Abbott's office that he was unhappy about this. I don't know that this was the exact quote, but Governor Abbott may have this feeling right now about this, that we really only have one governor at a time around here. He doesn't really want to be upstaged by Rick Perry. You have Perry coming in, of course. Shouldn't be a surprise, as far as which of the big three he joined. Remember, during the primary and the runoff, you had Governor Perry actively campaigning for Speaker Dade Phelan in his district that's anchored in Beaumont. Perry has been somebody who's been outspoken about the need to, in some ways, kind of get back to the way we have done things previously in Texas, where Republicans generally tried to work with each other and not be in the middle of a civil war all the time.
Yeah.
And you might remember, we reported it at QuorumReport.com. We talked about it here on your show, that when Perry was talking to voters in Beaumont, he did some lecturing of the current Republican leadership when you have Lieutenant Governor Patrick running around saying that we shouldn't have Democratic chairmen in the House, and Governor Abbott saying the same thing. You had Perry adding the historic perspective and saying that when Perry was lieutenant governor, he had Democratic chairman, and he said, who else has Democratic chairman? Dan Patrick. He has had Democratic chairman every year that he's been, in office. And so a lot of it seemed hypocritical to him. And it was my understanding that at some point, and I can report this for the first time here on your show, Chad, it's my understanding that Perry called Lieutenant Governor Patrick, had a conversation with him at some point during that campaign, and said, you're going too far with all of this. The attacks on the House, the attacks on the Speaker, and the way that governance has been done in Texas for decades and decades, going back to when Democrats were in charge and they had Republican chairmen, and vice versa now that Republicans are in charge. Patrick needed to back up on all that. Now, of course, Patrick hasn't moved at all on that. He's still blowing up the Speaker all the time, attacking him on social media and in fundraising emails. But this is going to be a very interesting thing, and I wonder if Perry coming on board, who of course has, as my publisher this afternoon, Harvey Kronberg, wrote at QuorumReport.com, Perry has impeccable Republican credentials, right? He's a long-time 14-year Republican governor. He served in the Trump administration. It's really hard to say this guy's a rhino, but as you know, some people are trying to do that, Chad. It'd be interesting to see if this does help to sort of allay the fears of some Republicans who think that they're going to be nonstop attacked if they support Dade Phelan for another term as Speaker.
I think it's very interesting, and like you, I can't remember a former governor doing something like this, and. Nope. I think someone who may be even more upset about it than Governor Abbott would be Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick, as he has been much more vocal about his dislike of the current Speaker. And like you said, I think Perry getting involved may give some ground cover to some of these Republicans when it comes to a Speaker's vote. And again, who knows how long Perry will be around? It wouldn't surprise me if Perry stays around as long as he wants to stay around. I think the Speaker would probably be okay with that. And at least through a Speaker's vote, I think Perry could maybe give some cover to some of these other Republicans out there, because there are a lot of voters, and I'll put it this way, there are a lot of voters who still like Rick Perry. I think some of the loudest activists on Twitter may not like Rick Perry anymore, but the voters still like Rick Perry.
Yeah, and I do think that it was something that was, really key to Phelan's reelection in Southeast Texas, was to have one of the elder statesmen of the Republican Party in Texas come in and speak up for the Speaker's, conservative credentials, and to say, look, he is the kind of Republican that you do want to have in office. But it's a very interesting point you raise about Lieutenant Governor Patrick. It's been my understanding, and the reporting on this has been that Perry and Patrick have had a friendly relationship, that they have a good working relationship, and I think that if they indeed did have a conversation at some point about, all of Patrick's attacks on Phelan and Perry, really disagreeing. And look, whether they had that conversation or not, I'm going to stick by the reporting. But whether they did or not, it's been very clear that Perry does not approve of what Dan Patrick has been doing in attacking the speaker the way that he has. I'll be interested to see if, because they do have that good relationship, or at least they have had one, Chad, if some of Patrick's attacks on the speaker, if he might calm down a little bit with some of that, now that you do have somebody who's been an ally of Patrick working in the speaker's office.